Most people think eating healthy after 60 simply means avoiding sugar or eating less food. But surprisingly, many doctors notice that some older adults continue eating one very common food almost every single day, without realizing how much it may quietly affect inflammation, blood pressure, energy, sleep quality, digestion, and long-term health. And here's what makes this even more dangerous. Many people believe the food is harmless because they've eaten it their entire life. Tonight, we're going to talk about the common food many healthy seniors gradually reduce after 60. Why the aging body becomes more sensitive to certain foods over time, and the realistic eating habits doctors often recommend for healthier aging. I'm Dr. Richard Prime. Now let's begin. Why the body changes after 60. Here's something many people never fully understand. The body after 60 often responds differently to food than it did at 30 or 40. Digestion changes. Metabolism slows. Blood sugar regulation becomes less efficient. Inflammation may increase more easily. And unfortunately, the body often becomes less forgiving toward heavily processed foods over time. That's one reason some adults suddenly notice low energy after meals, bloating, poor sleep, weight gain, fatigue, higher blood pressure, or worsening digestion later in life. The body is changing, and eating habits often need to change too. The common food many healthy seniors limit. Now here's where things get interesting. One of the biggest foods many health-conscious older adults gradually reduce is heavily processed food. And honestly, this category includes far more than people realize. Processed meats, packaged snacks, fast food, sugary breakfast pastries, highly salted frozen meals, ultra-processed convenience foods. And unfortunately, modern diets often make these foods extremely common. Why do doctors worry about them? Because heavily processed foods may contain excessive sodium, unhealthy fats, refined sugars, preservatives, and additives that may affect the body over time, especially after 60. Why sodium becomes more important with age. And in just a moment, I'm going to explain why one extremely common salty food quietly affects blood pressure more than many older adults realize. But first, there's something important people need to understand. As the body ages, blood pressure control often becomes more sensitive. That's why excessive sodium intake becomes a major concern. Highly processed foods may contain surprisingly large amounts of sodium. And unfortunately, many adults consume much more sodium than they realize because it's hidden inside packaged foods. Over time, high sodium intake may affect blood pressure, fluid retention, heart strain, kidney health, and circulation. That's one reason healthier seniors often become much more careful about processed foods later in life. The breakfast food doctors worry about most. Now here's something doctors notice constantly. Many adults start the day with highly processed breakfasts, sugary cereals, processed meats, pastries, fast food sandwiches, large sugary drinks. And while these meals may feel convenient, they often create major blood sugar spikes, followed by energy crashes later. That's one reason many older adults feel exhausted shortly after eating heavily processed meals. The body works harder to regulate everything. Why inflammation matters more after 60. Now here's another issue modern medicine discusses much more seriously today. Inflammation. Short-term inflammation is part of normal healing, but chronic inflammation may quietly affect the body over time. Joints, circulation, heart health, energy levels, sleep quality, and overall aging. And unfortunately, diets high in heavily processed foods may contribute to inflammatory stress in some individuals. That's why doctors consistently encourage more whole foods, instead of relying heavily on packaged convenience meals. Why some seniors feel fine until they suddenly don't. And later in this video, I'm going to explain why some adults feel fine for years, while unhealthy eating habits quietly affect the body in the background. Because long-term health problems rarely appear overnight. Usually, the damage develops slowly, quietly, over years of repeated habits. That's why prevention matters so much. The eating habits many healthy seniors follow. Now let's talk practically. What habits do many healthier older adults focus on instead? More balanced meals, more vegetables, more fiber, moderate portions, better hydration, more protein support, and less dependence on heavily processed food. Many healthy seniors also avoid overeating late at night because poor nighttime eating habits may affect sleep quality, blood sugar stability, digestion, and energy levels the next morning. And honestly, consistency matters more than perfection. Why protein matters more than many people realize. Now here's something many older adults overlook completely. Protein becomes extremely important after 60, because aging muscles naturally weaken over time. Doctors often encourage balanced protein intake to help support muscle maintenance, strength, energy, mobility, and healthier aging overall. That's why many healthier seniors prioritize foods like fish, eggs, beans, Greek yogurt, lean proteins, and balanced meals instead of heavily processed snacks. Why sugar also becomes a bigger problem. Now here's another issue doctors constantly discuss: excess sugar, sugary drinks, desserts, processed snacks, sweetened beverages. Large sugar spikes may affect energy, appetite, blood sugar stability, and long-term metabolic health. And unfortunately, many adults unknowingly consume sugar throughout the entire day. That's why healthier older adults often become much more aware of hidden sugar intake over time. Why hydration matters too. Here's another issue many seniors overlook: hydration. Some adults replace water almost entirely with soda, sweet tea, or sugary drinks. But proper hydration affects circulation, digestion, energy, kidney function, and even mental clarity. That's why balanced hydration becomes increasingly important after 60. Why movement also affects how the body handles food. Now here's something fascinating. Movement affects metabolism tremendously. Walking after meals, light activity, regular movement. These habits may help circulation, digestion, blood sugar stability, and overall energy. Meanwhile, inactivity often worsens sluggishness after eating. That's why healthy aging is rarely only about food. The body works together as a connected system. Nutrition, movement, sleep, stress, hydration. Everything affects everything else. Why stress may quietly affect eating habits. Now here's another important issue: stress eating. Many adults under chronic stress begin relying more heavily on processed comfort foods, sugary snacks, late-night eating, emotional eating. And unfortunately, chronic stress may quietly affect appetite regulation and food choices over time. That's why healthy aging requires emotional balance too, not only physical habits. Why some adults age healthier than others. Now here's something doctors notice constantly. The healthiest older adults are usually not the people following extreme internet diets. They're often the people protecting the basics consistently. Balanced meals, moderate portions, more whole foods, better movement, better sleep, and realistic routines maintained over time. Those habits may sound simple, but they often shape long-term health tremendously. The biggest mistake many people make. One of the biggest mistakes adults make is waiting until major health problems appear before changing eating habits. But prevention usually begins much earlier. The body often sends small warning signs first. Low energy, poor sleep, weight gain, fatigue, bloating, poor circulation, blood pressure changes. These symptoms deserve attention early, not years later. Why early action matters. Now here's the important part. Not every processed food suddenly becomes dangerous, and healthy aging does not require perfection. But awareness matters tremendously. The body after 60 often responds better to balance than extremes. Small, realistic improvements repeated consistently usually matter far more than short-term crash diets. The real lesson most people learn too late. And honestly, many adults spend decades eating whatever feels convenient while assuming the body will simply handle it. But over time, the body changes. Recovery slows. Inflammation increases more easily. And unhealthy habits quietly become harder to tolerate. That's why many healthy seniors eventually learn one major lesson. Protect the body before symptoms force you to. Before we end tonight's conversation, remember this. Healthy aging is rarely built through one perfect food. It's usually shaped by consistent habits repeated daily over time. Better choices, better balance, better awareness, more whole foods, less processed food, better hydration, and realistic habits the body can actually sustain long-term. Because often, the healthiest older adults are not chasing perfection. They're simply protecting the basics consistently. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'm Dr. Richard Prime, and I'll see you in the next video.